Dear students, we have started our discussion in high altitude physiology part 1. Now let us finish this topic part 2 lecture. When we go to high altitude, there will be some physiological response, compensatory response of our body to high altitude hypoxia. Two types of physiological compensatory response occurs: accommodation and acclimatization. Accommodation is immediate reflex adjustments of respiratory and cardiovascular systems to hypoxia. And acclimatization is changes in the body tissues in response to long-term exposure to hypoxia, and person gradually get adjusted to low PO2. What happens in accommodation? First is hyperventilation. It is secondary to stimulation of peripheral chemoreceptors by low PO2. Increases the alveolar ventilation to a maximum of about 1.65 times normal. So there will be increase in the PO2 and decrease in the PCO2 due to carbon dioxide washout. Due to decrease in the PCO2, there will be respiratory alkalosis because of decrease in H plus concentration. So it lowers respiratory drive due to less stimulation of respiratory center. Respiratory drive continues to increase because now kidney will come into the action. Kidney will correct the respiratory alkalosis by producing metabolic acidosis. In accommodation, the second response is tachycardia. So increases the O2 delivery to the tissues by increasing cardiac output. Cardiac output returns to normal after several weeks. Third is increase in 2,3-diphosphoglycerate concentration in RBCs due to hypoxia and alkalosis. It shifts oxygen dissociation curve to the right, which helps to maintain tissue O2 tension at slightly higher level. After accommodation, now comes acclimatization. While staying at the high altitude for several days to several weeks, a person slowly gets adapted or adjusted to the low oxygen tension that hypoxia causes lesser and lesser effects on the body. This enables the person for further ascent, and this adaptation or the adjustment of the body to the high altitude are collectively known as acclimatization. Now let us discuss acclimatization changes. First is polycythemia, means increase in the RBC count. It is due to release of erythropoietin, which stimulates RBC production from the bone marrow. So there will be increase in the hemoglobin concentration from 15 gram percentage to about 20 gram percentage. Increase in the hematocrit or PCV from normal 40 to 45 percentage to 60 percentage. Increase in the total blood volume by 20 to 30 percentage. Increase in the pulmonary ventilation, gradual increase in the ventilation to an average of about 5 times normal. Cardiovascular changes, increase in heart rate, increase in force of contraction and cardiac output. Increase in diffusing capacity of the lungs. Cellular and tissue acclimatization. increase in oxidative enzyme concentration in the mitochondria, increase in mitochondrial density within the cells, and increase in capillary density. Now, this is a recent concept, hypoxia inducible factors. It is a master switch for body's response to hypoxia. They are DNA binding transcription factors that respond to hypoxia and activate the genes that encode proteins needed for adequate oxygen delivery to the tissues. In the presence of adequate oxygen, they are inactivated by specific hydroxylase. These are the hypoxia inducible factor controlled genes. Genes associated with vascular endothelial growth factors, erythropoietin genes, mitochondrial genes, glycolytic enzyme genes, genes that increases the availability of nitric oxide which cause pulmonary vasodilatation. So, due to genetic level changes, eventually person's body will get acclimatized to new environment at high altitude. Now these graphs are showing natural acclimatization of native humans living at high altitude. Remember, in all the aspects of acclimatization, natives are superior to even the best acclimatized lowlanders. Now focus on the graphs that are oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curves of sea level dwellers and mountain dwellers. We all know the normal oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve of sea level dwellers. On the x-axis PO2 and on the y-axis quantity of oxygen or volume percentage of oxygen is given. You all know in the arterial blood the PO2 is 95 and in the venous blood it is around 40 mmHg. Now if you will see the red color curve of mountain dwellers at 15,000 feet. Now see the arterial PO2 level. It is very less. It is around 40 millimeter of mercury. And see the venous PO2 level. It is very less, around 20 millimeter of mercury. But even with low PO2 level, see the volume percentage of oxygen. It is more as compared to sea level dwellers. So the wonder thing is that mountain dwellers are able to maintain more oxygen level and able to release their more oxygen level even with low PO2 levels. Due to hypoxia, work capacity is always reduced at the high altitude. Work capacity is reduced in direct proportion to decrease in maximum rate of oxygen uptake that the body can achieve. If the person is unacclimatized, you can see the work capacity becomes almost half. If the person is acclimatized for at least 2 months, now the work capacity will remain 68% of normal. Those who are natives living at 13,000 feet and working at 17,000 feet, you can see they can maintain their work capacity almost 87% of normal. In the previous lecture, we have already discussed acute mountain sickness, pulmonary edema, and cerebral edema. Now let us discuss chronic mountain sickness. It is also known as Monge's disease. Monge's disease occurs in some long-term residents of high altitude. So Living at the high altitude for longer period may sometimes create the problems. It is due to extreme polycythemia, cyanosis, malaise, fatigue, and exercise intolerance. What are the effects of Monge's disease or chronic mountain sickness? Due to increase in the RBC count, due to more erythropoietin release, now the hematocrit value, PCV value becomes exceptionally high. Pulmonary artery pressure becomes more elevated. Right side of the heart due to overload of the work becomes greatly enlarged. Ultimately, congestive cardiac failure occurs. Death often follows if not removed to the lower altitude. Apart from acute mountain sickness, chronic mountain sickness, pulmonary edema, and cerebral edema, what are the other effects of high altitude? So now we will discuss other aspects apart from hypoxia. First is effect of expansion of the gases. In the pulmonary diffusion lecture, we have discussed Boyle's law. Pressure of given mass of gas is inversely proportional to its volume. So in the high altitude, due to decrease in the pressure, volume will increase. In the GIT, in digestive system, there will be painful distension of the stomach and intestine because they are hollow organs, they contain air. In the lungs, due to over-expansion of the alveoli, there may be destruction of the alveoli. Then paranasal sinuses and middle ear cavity, which contains air, may cause damage. Very rapid ascent over 30,000 feet, gases may evolve as bubbles, nitrogen bubbles. We will discuss in detail about nitrogen bubbles and the problems of nitrogen bubbles in our decompression sickness lecture in deep sea diving physiology. We have discussed this law, Henry's law, in pulmonary diffusion. The amount of the dissolved gas in a liquid will decrease if the pressure around the liquid decreases. When pressure is released, gas comes out of solution in the form of bubbles. And these bubbles in the body cause evolved gas problems that we will discuss in detail later on. We all know in the high altitude the temperature will drastically reduced, and due to fall in the temperature there are various effects on our body. At the altitude of 10,000 feet temperature is 0 degrees Celsius. At 20,000 feet it will reduce to minus 22 degrees Celsius. At 40,000 feet it is minus 44 degrees Celsius. Due to minus temperature, injury due to cold or frostbite occurs if the body is not adequately protected by warm clothing. Then effects of light rays. Now ultraviolet rays will come into picture because the protective ozone layer is not there. So skin irritation by ultraviolet rays, then sunlight reflected by snow might damage the retina if not protected by suitable glasses. So these are the other effects of high altitude apart from hypoxic effects. So with this we are ending our topic high altitude physiology. Thank you.